If you've been scrolling through endless laptop specs, watching one after another YouTube roundups, and still feel like you're stuck in a loop of which one actually makes sense for me, this review is meant to cut through the noise. I've been in that exact spot trying to juggle a 9-to-5 job, a side hustle that involves a lot of video editing, and the occasional night-off-the-weekend gaming session. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The MSI Stealth 14 AI Studio lands in a niche that's getting crowded fast, a 14-inch chassis that promises desktop-class power, an AI-driven performance layer, and a 165Hz FHD plus screen that claims to be both sharp and fluid. On paper, it sounds like the perfect compromise between a portable workhorse and a serious gamer, but the real question is whether those promises hold up when you actually try to run Photoshop, stream a game, and type up a client proposal on the same device. First off, let's talk about who this machine really serves. If you're a creator-oriented gamer, someone who spends evenings editing 4K footage, then jumps into an RT-enabled title like Valorant or Cyberpunk 2077 without wanting to lug a full-size tower, this is the sweet spot. The Intel Core Ultra 7155H paired with an NVIDIA RTX 4050 gives you enough CUDA cores to accelerate rendering tasks while still delivering the frame rates you expect from a 165Hz display. The 16GB of DDR5 RAM feels generous for multitasking, and the 1TB NVMe SSD means you won't be waiting on long load screens or file transfers. In short, the hardware aligns with the workflow of a work-and-play professional who values speed over sheer graphical fidelity. On the flip side, if you're a competitive esports player chasing the absolute highest frame rates on ultra-low latency, you might find the 14-inch screen a bit restrictive. The RTX 4050, while solid, sits a tier below the RTX 4060 Ti and RTX 4070 models that dominate the top-tier esports market. You'll still get 120+ FPS in most 1080p titles, but you won't be pushing 240Hz or hitting the absolute max settings without compromising on visual quality. Likewise, if your primary use is heavy 3D modeling or you need a laptop that can sit comfortably on a drafting table for hours, you might outgrow the 14-inch footprint and the 165Hz panel's brightness ceiling. Now, let's dig into the day-to-day experience. Opening the lid, the first thing you notice is the matte, deep blue finish that feels premium without being flashy. The chassis is thin enough to slip into a standard backpack, but the weight around 3.6 pounds means you'll still feel it after a few hours of carrying it across campus or a coffee shop. The keyboard uses perky RGB lighting, but the real win here is the 1.5mm travel and a subtle actuation curve that feels comfortable for both typing long reports and spamming keys in fast-paced shooters. The trackpad is responsive, but I quickly found myself reaching for an external mouse when precision was needed for Photoshop brushwork. The display is where the AI-powered performance claim tries to stand out. MSI's AI engine promises dynamic scaling of textures and frame rates based on what you're doing, essentially trying to give you the best of both worlds, smooth gameplay and crisp visuals for creative work. In practice, the AI upscaling does help maintain higher frame rates in graphically demanding games by subtly lowering texture detail where it's less noticeable. When I switched to Adobe Premiere for a quick 1080p edit, the same AI seemed to allocate more GPU memory to the rendering pipeline, shaving a few seconds off export times compared to a comparable non-AI laptop I've used before. It's not a game-changing miracle, but it's a tangible benefit you notice after a few sessions. Thermals are always the elephant in the room for thin gaming laptops, and the Stealth 14 handles them with a dual-fan setup that whirs noticeably louder under load. During a 2-hour gaming marathon of Elden Ring, the CPU clock dipped from its boost peak of 5.0 GHz down to around 4.2 GHz, and the GPU hovered near 80°C. The fan noise rose to a level where you'd want headphones on, but it never crossed into a screaming crescendo that would make you cringe. If you plan to use the laptop on a desk in a quiet office, you might want to keep the performance profiles a notch lower to keep the acoustic footprint manageable. Battery life is another practical consideration. MSI rates the unit at around 6 hours of mixed use, and that estimate holds up when you're toggling between spreadsheet work, a bit of video playback, and occasional gaming. If you push the RTX 4050 hard for an hour of AAA gaming, the battery drops to roughly 40% in that time, which is expected. For people who need a full day of unplugged productivity, the Stealth 14 is more of a bring it to the office and plug in when you can machine rather than a true all-day wanderer. Connectivity is surprisingly robust for a laptop this size. There's a Thunderbolt 4 port that lets you daisy chain an external monitor, fast external SSD, or even a dock with additional USB-C and Ethernet. Two USB-A 3.2 ports cover the legacy peripherals, and the HDMI 2.1 output supports a 4K 60Hz